Hi, I'm Wade from Thoroughbred Diesel. Today we're going to be putting our S&S Diesel DCR CP4 pump conversion on a 2012 Ford Powerstroke. You've seen us do a lot of videos on the DCR pump conversion from S&S Diesel, and I got to be honest with you, I said this yesterday in our unboxing video, this is probably one of the most highly anticipated part releases that we have seen in light duty diesel. It has been for me, for sure. The guys at S&S Diesel have put a ton of work and research and beta testing into this DCR pump, and they truly believe that they've got the perfect solution for the CP4 pump failures in the Powerstroke, the 6.7 Powerstroke line. Now, you remember during the farm show in February of this year, 2023, we went up, did an interview with Luke, talked about some of the specifics of the pump, you know, just kind of scratched the surface of it. We have our unboxing video that we've done on this as well. Today we're going to be doing our installation video. Big thank you to S&S for sending us a kit for installation on this truck. Kind of comes full circle for us because we did a disaster prevention kit from S&S on this truck a couple of years ago. We're going to be incorporating that return filtration into this kit. You don't have to have that, but if you've done a disaster kit or disaster prevention kit from S&S, that return fuel filter can still be used and can still be retained. So this is a great alternative for you guys that are worried about CP4 failures. If you've had a CP4 failure, you can do the DCR pump conversion, get yourself a new set of injectors, new rails, and all of the things, and couple this together as a contamination kit. But the nice thing about the DCR pump, this is a collaboration between S&S Diesel and Standardine or Pure Power Technologies. And the nice thing about this pump in its first form, I guess you can say, has been an overseas pump. So we know that this pump is very, very robust because it hasn't been seen in other areas, the ULSD like we see here in the States, and it has proven to be a very, very robust pump. So I think with this motor, and this motor has proven itself to be a very, very robust motor as well, I think this is a very, very natural fit. You know, the guys at S&S were really concerned with getting a pump back in the valley, driven off the gear set in the engine. And guys like me, I was just pushing for somebody to do something, get it on a belt drive, whatever it is. We need to do something to give us an alternative out there for the CP4. They stayed the course. They got a gear-driven pump, one that fits in the valley and is a perfect, again, alternative to the CP4. So I'm going to quit babbling. It's time to do an installation. Let's get started. All right, so general prep work that we've done to start our installation is we've removed both negative battery cables, isolated the terminals as well. On this truck, customer had already gone and done an aftermarket intake, so I didn't know that there was a need to show that, but I have removed the intake and the intake box. You can actually just remove the intake tube. It gives you access to, on a stock intake, that actually gives you access to the serpentine belt tensioner, but I went ahead and took it all out so we could, you know, just have that much more clearance. Then after that, what you're going to be doing is working to get the coolant lines off and moved, and then our vacuum line off and moved back over. So first thing we do there, with the truck cooled off, we've removed the cap off the degas bottle so we don't have any pressure on the system. Very important, don't do that while it's hot. And then the hose on the degas bottle here, we're just going to go ahead and remove it, and then I just plug it with a bolt in case you get some residual. And put my clamp back up, and it is connected at the connection on the vacuum line. Then there's one here on the front. It also has a hold down at that EGR crossover tube, and then after you've got all of that, you can take that and you can get it over on this side of the truck and get it out of your way. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the vacuum line. I won't fix my watch because it's going to aggravate me to death. Next, I'm going to unhook the vacuum line. The vacuum line, there's two blue connectors on it. That's going to release pressure from the vacuum system, and then you can just simply lift it and roll it out of your way as well. Okay, next we're going to start removing, we're going to start on the driver's side of the truck and the things that we're going to remove on this side, which is going to be unbolting the transmission dipstick, and then we will unbolt the oil gauge dipstick that is actually bolted to the manifold as well. We're going to remove this fuel line in this shot as well, or just show you how to do it. So 8 metric for the trans dipstick. I like to use a short one, and we will remove this bolt now, and I go ahead and just do the oil gauge bolt as well while we've got it, while we're right here, but I'll switch over to an 8 metric deep well and get it. So I'm gonna pull this bolt out real quick on the trans dipstick, and then we'll come back and show you getting the oil dipstick bolt. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and remove the dipstick bolt, 8 metric again here. Need a deep well to get it out, and we'll go ahead and remove that and just have it done. And then after this, we're going to move over to the fuel line, delivery line. All right, next we are going to we're going to unhook the lift pump supply line as it comes from the fuel filter here. So as it comes from the fuel filter, and then it goes down and connects to the metal line right down here. This has the CP4 bypass kit on it from S&S Diesel. So we've got a supply line that not only goes to the metal line that feeds to the CP4 pump, but we have our supply that goes to the fuel control actuator. So we're just going to go ahead and unhook this. Either line you got, doesn't matter. The line is going to be discarded because that is going to change with the supply line for the DCR pump. So we're going to get this red connector, and just remember you can just pull it up and then back it straight off of the fitting. We're already on this side of the truck and we're working, so let's just go ahead and take the fuel filter out just like a normal fuel filter change. All right, we're going to remove the hot side intercooler pipe now. 11 metric to remove it at the air to water. What we're going to do here is get enough of the clamp to where we can get it up and away from the boot, like so. And then just use pick to dislodge it at the air to water. So once it's good and loose, then you remember your clip for the pipe in here. You have to have a long pick to get back in there, which is kind of difficult. And then it's a spring clamp around it. So what we do is just go around and release it, and it will stay in the service position once you've taken it where it needs to go. And then get 2 ears of it dislodged, and it should come on. You just got to work with it too. Well, you're not going to hit it first try, and I knew I wasn't going to either. So once we get that, get it dislodged like so, you can kind of work front to back and then take your hot side intercooler pipe out. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our cold side intercooler pipe off. I just take off the knurl. If you don't have an aftermarket pipe here, we still got a stock pipe on this truck, so I'm just going to take this elbow that actually goes to the thing. So I'll free this up and make sure that this can turn, and then I'll just use a pick at the top side of this spring clamp and then just bring it up. I work towards one side or the other, and you just don't ever know till you get there. But the spring clamp is on these is half, well, it is a complete circle, but there is an opening to where you can dislodge it. So that's what we do. Get it completely off the pipe like so, and then move it out of the way, and voila. Clean the residual oil up that's going to be inside the pipe. Don't freak out and think your turbo's going on you. It's just the goodness that is PCV. So we're going to start working on our upper intake manifold. First thing that we do is we go ahead, there's a coolant line that has a has a push pin or a little Christmas tree, we just unhook it so we can move it around and articulate it. Then I unhook my map sensor. The map sensor just got a catch on it, and then it's got a Christmas tree push pin on the back, and we get it out of the way as well. And then what I do is I go ahead and take my 8 metric and I zip out my 7 upper intake manifold bolts that we can get to before we have to go towards the upper intake manifold bolts that are back there at the manifold. So there are 8 in the back, but there are 7 here on our front for 15 in total. We can go ahead and buzz these out. And you watch your positioning on there. There's keepers that hold these in, so these front ones can come out, can just be removed with the intake manifold. You know, but you still want to look because there's different lengths on them. Everywhere there's a bolt, there's a little indentation, so it's pretty easy to track. All right, so that's got those 7 loosened up, and then we're going to get on our top side creeper, and we're going to go for the 8 in the back. On our upper intake, air intake plenum, we showed you taking the 7 bolts out in the front, and then I made mention of the 8 in the back. The 8 in the back connect the legs of the upper intake plenum to the intake manifolds itself, and there are 8 bolts, 2 in the front and then 2 in the back that are a little harder to get to, and it's really hard to kind of get a shot of it back here, but there are 2 more back there. Same thing on the passenger side, the plenum, that's a really good shot. There's 4 bolts over there, so for 8 it makes 15. There's really nothing that I'm going to be able to show here. This is kind of a grab it and growl thing, but I'll show you the intake plenum coming out. We just use deep well 8 metric, and then I show this in a lot of our videos. You have a universal 8 metric right there. If you don't have one of these and you work on any modern light diesel truck, you got to get one. This one's a snap-on, so that gets us to where we can get into the back spots or to the back bolts and get those. So what we're going to do is go ahead and loosen those up on the plenum, on the upper intake plenum right here as well. There is another Christmas tree that is in the plenum for the map sensor that goes up. So you want to make sure that when you're coming out, you want to get that push pin out of the back of there. I hope that you can see it as well too. So we're going to go ahead and get all of the bolts out and loosened up, or just loosened up and ready to pull out, and then we'll show you the intake plenum coming out. So I made mention that there are different sizes of the bolts in the intake manifold. There's longer bolts and there's shorter bolts. There's only 2 different sizes here. The shorter bolts go in the short legs of the manifold, and we'll show that out on the table. But the longer bolts will go at the legs that have the longer longer orifice, for lack of a better word. And each one of these bolts has got a black retainer that comes on them. Make a mental note of the bolts that you pull out and where the collar stays in there and where it comes out, because you'll double up on the collars. If you don't, that doesn't hurt anything, but you know, it doesn't, you know, you don't have the functionality of the little plastic collars. So just make note of that. I take as many of the bolts out when I can, to come for the upper intake manifold to come out. The back one underneath of the cowl cannot come out. It's got to come with the manifold. If you're doing a 17 and plus truck, the upper intake and the lower intake manifold got to come together as a unit. You don't have to do that on these trucks on the 11 to 16s. So we're going to go ahead and start bringing this upper intake manifold out. We've got it dislodged, and I just kind of put my arm on that coolant line to be able to get everything loose and then start working it out. And you just want to be really careful. And then once you get so far, this Christmas tree push pin that holds the exhaust back pressure sensor in, you want to make sure that you get it disconnected. I got it disconnected off camera. And then when you get to the wastegate solenoid, there's another Christmas tree push pin back there. I don't think Adam's going to be able to see it, but we are going to actually, you know what, I forgot that. We can leave that with the manifold. So you just unhook it from the hard line as well, and then pop it loose. Pop the Christmas tree push pin out of the back of the manifold just like so. Be really careful because you got an open manifold right there. And now we will roll the upper intake manifold out like so. And this is what I was going to show you. You can see the shorter legs take the shorter bolts. The taller legs obviously take the longer bolts. So there's your upper intake manifold. Going for our lower intake manifold now. We're going to unhook our throttle valve connection. First off, pull the yellow slide back and then remove that. And then the EGR temp sensor that is right here, it goes down towards the vacuum pump at the front of the motor. It's got to put a cup, or it's got a Christmas tree pin on it that holds it. You just make sure you pop that out. And then we're going to take this EGR crossover pipe out next. So there are 8 metric bolts on it. Be real careful with this. Don't break anything off. They have a tendency to do so. The upper one's not so bad, but just take your time with it. And if it gives you any problems, you'll go a little way and then tighten it back up. But just this is another nice use of that swivel 8 metric socket as well. So we'll go ahead and break those loose. And remove the bolts. I like to take the gasket out of here too. Just kind of remember where my orientation, or how my orientation is, so I can, if it'll come loose, I can slide it out and get it out of the way. And then I switch back over to a short 8 metric to get the upper bolt, the upper 2 bolts out. There's 2 of them right here again. The black bolts for this go on the EGR cooler side. The chrome bolts with the washers on them go on the intake plenum side. I will remove that one right there, so I'll show you the difference in the 2 bolts. Yep, drop that one. That's okay. I can get to it. You have the chrome bolt when this goes on the plenum side, and then you have the black bolt that goes back at the EGR side. So we'll get that gasket out of there as well. They're the same, but you just watch orientation. Then pull that EGR crossover pipe out, and then in case you were watching and you wanted to give me a hard time about it, see my bolt. All I gotta do is get a magnet and get it. So EGR crossover pipe is out. All right, we're going to show you where the bolts are and what you need to unhook to get the lower intake manifold out. And then we're going to have an offside shot showing it coming out. But I start with my crankcase filter, and on these early trucks here, the crankcase filter is going to have a sensor on them, and I unhook it at the actual crankcase filter itself. Be very, very careful. This hose gets brittle over time and it breaks, but this one's still intact for a 2012 model, which is great. So to disconnect this at the crankcase filter, you pinch the 2 black tabs in, and it's just got a O-ring seal at the filter. So just back it off, so don't put any more undue pressure on it than you have to, and just leave it be. Then you have this boot right here at the discharge of the turbo, 5/16 there, and then the intake of the turbo has a boot connected to the lower intake manifold as well, 5/16 here as well. And then there are 3 10 metric bolts, one here and then 2 short ones right here to take the plenum off and get it out of your way. So I'm going to cut over to the other camera and we're going to show you taking it out. All right, so we're on to the lower intake manifold now. 3 bolts hold the lower intake manifold on, but we have this intake boot that services the turbocharger. It is 5/16, and both of those are usually on the bottom. So we just loosen them up. I've got all of my boots loosened up at the turbo like we were just showing you on the GoPro shot there. I've got my my crankcase line disconnected. I've got the sensor disconnected as well. We're just going to zip these 3 10 metric bolts out. This is the long one here, and then these are 2 shorts on the passenger side. Alrighty. Then we just take the lower intake manifold and start walking it out of the boots, like so. Excuse me. Just gonna angle it up pretty heavy, and then bring the lower intake manifold right on out. All right, we're going to go ahead and take the oil fill out, and what we're doing is we're making ourselves clearance to be able to get the service lines for the stock CP4 out. And that's one of the awesome things about this fuel system. So your CP4 feeds both ports of the CP4 feed the driver's side fuel rail. The driver's side fuel rail is pretty easy to get to. If you got to do anything on the passenger side fuel rail, of course, EGR's got to come off, and then you're talking about a couple more hours of work there or so. But we're going to go ahead and take these service lines for the CP4 out. So we start with just go ahead and disconnecting both the connectors. This is 11 to 14 to truck. So we've got we have got both of the sensors on this. It's 2012. I'll move my sensor here. Old sensors, prone to breakage, so just be careful. I got a lock tab up on that. We got that moved out of the way, and then we've got a little Christmas tree push pin in there right here. And we'll disengage that. Then we'll go down the pump. I've already done it. I've loosened up the 8 metric bolt at the pump here. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and get our oil filler neck out. It's got an 8 metric bolt in it as well. So we'll just remove it while we're taking the bolt out of the pump. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get that oil filler neck out of our way. All right, and then to remove it, you just take the cap off like so, and then you have to turn it, I think it's almost 180 degrees. Turn it 180 degrees, get past your wire, and then, well, it's not actually 180, it's a little bit less than that, but then we just move it out of the way. Really good time to take something and set it in that hole to keep anything from falling inside. There you go. So we'll get the oil filler neck out of the way, and then there's 2 8 metric bolts that hold the rail to the driver's side fuel rail, or the driver's side valve cover there. I'm going to come back and get both of those as soon as I set this oil fill down and get it out of my hands. The next portion of getting our supply lines off the CP4 is there is a connector right here underneath of the wastegate line. That is a 13 metric, and it'll pull this stud out when we remove it, and then that will allow us to move the line as well. And we'll pop that out and show it to you. All right, so we got it out, and then our return lines that are right here on the service line, I'll go ahead and pop it off. This is the kit coming from the S&S filter, so I'm just going to kind of move it out of my way. And then my stock line, if you were working with this would be inverted and turned right there, so I'm just going to simply release it and then release the S&S line. I can't do it one-handed, so I'm going to do that and release that S&S line, and then that will have all fuel lines disconnected from that line, and then I'll come back and show you the bolts. I misspoke there. There is one more line on the driver's side fuel rail for the return, and it's got the green safety lock on it. To get it off, you just pinch the legs together and then push it back, and it is hard to get to, so once you get it started, easier to really get a pick underneath of that green portion, and then I will be correct and we will have all fuel lines off. I want to show that connection one more time. I hope that you can see it here. Again, right here on the return portion of that line, you just simply want to push on the legs of those, and then when the connector is loose like so, you should be able to dislodge this portion of the line and get it to where you can remove the service lines to the CP4. You're going to get a little bit of residual fuel right there, no problem. And then we're left with 2 metric 8 bolts, one here and one right here, that we will be removing, and then we'll show the line coming out. Somebody's been in this truck before. The black cover is off of here, and then these injectors for the front cylinder and the next one back are not over it, so we're not going to have to remove them. If you do, you just simply take a pick, slide those up, and then disconnect them from the injector. It's not going to hurt a thing. You just have to get them out of your way. So we're going to go back, we're going to get our 8 metric, and we're going to move these bolts. We've already got this one loosened up. We'll go ahead and remove it and the one behind it, and then we should be able to lift this rail assembly. All right, so now we're just removing the lines. I just popped that out of the pump. I just put a little bit of pressure on it, popped it on out. So we've got our stud out at the fuel filter housing, and then we've got our hold down bolts off, and we can just simply bring this assembly straight out. Be aware of your wastegate line, like so. Residual fuel, all the things. Do not throw this away. You are going to have to roll these sensors over. All right, we're going to start working on getting our clutch fan off now. I'm just going to show you with the GoPro here what we're going after. So there is an electrical connector right here on the right hand side of the fan. To release it on the back side of the belt here, you'll see that there is a clip. I can't do it one-handed, but we're going to disconnect that, and then there is a 13 metric bolt right here that we will loosen. And what that's going to do is that's going to let our wiring harness come away from the pulley to be able to sit it just here in the fan shroud. Just sit it back here. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to disconnect that wiring harness right there. Again, it's on the back side here. Sorry about the light. It's on the back side here. Then I want to remove that 13 metric bolt, and then that'll have that to where I can show you how to get your fan off. I like to do this before I take the serpentine belt off. The instructions will tell you to take the serpentine belt off first, but I leave the serpentine belt on, so I've got a little bit of pressure on it to get my clutch fan off. Now it's time to take the fan off of it. It's going to be normal threads, so right hand threads. We've got a special tool to take them off here. There's it makes mention in the instructions of what the correct Ford part number is for this, but an air hammer works any way it goes. You can just take an air hammer and simply use a portion of it and put pressure on the nut, and should spin it right off. But this tool works really nice too, which incorporates air hammer, just incorporates a wrench. So again, normal threads, and we're going to spin her off here real quick.
we showed you getting the wiring harness off. And you want to have some cardboard ready here too, because you don't want to drop it into your radiator. Then that would make for a bad day. Okay. All right. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just lean this back. I'm going to get me a couple of nice piece of cardboard. Kind of fold it up in here. Feed it back there. So I can protect my radiator. There it goes. Try to lean it as well to where it's just the plastic blades sitting there, so everything should be pretty safe for us right there. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our serpentine belt off now. Your tensioner is on the passenger side of the truck, and it is 3/8 drive, so get yourself a long 3/8 ratchet because it is a pretty stout tensioner, and then you're going to want to be pushing down on it. So I've got my arm in your way, Adam, but you do want to be pushing down on the tensioner, and then just lift the belt off like so. Give yourself enough room for the ratchet to come back, and then pop the ratchet out and get it out of your way. If you don't want to screw up your orientation of the belt, don't take anything off. What we're trying to accomplish is getting to this, the fan drive. So we're going to be removing these fan drive bolts off, and that's going to get us access to the vacuum pump, which will be next. So that's got us access where we're wanting. So next we're going to go after the fan drive. All right, we're going to be removing the fan drive now. There were originally 5 bolts. We've got the 1 bolt that we had to take out for the wiring harness, but you've got 1, 2 down there, way down there is 3, and then our 4th one is down here on this right hand side. These are all 13 metrics as well. Don't have to worry about anything funky here, no ball bearings coming flying out. Just take the bolts off and take the fan drive off. So we're working on our fan drive now. We've got our last bolt left is the top bolt here, and we're just going to go ahead and zip it out. And that's our 5th and last bolt in the fan drive. All right. We're going to just separate it, and it'll walk off of its dowels there. Just pull it out, and then you have access to the vacuum pump. We're going to go ahead and show you where the bolts are on the vacuum pump on this truck. So you've got 4 8 metrics. You've got 1 right here. You've got 1 almost dead center of the top, and then you've got 1 over here at the 3 o'clock position, and then there is another one kind of hidden down here, right there, if you can see it, and that is your 4th one. So the gasket behind this, we always suggest for it to be replaced. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and start working on getting these bolts out to get the vacuum pump off, and we're taking this off to gain access to the drive nut on the CP4. All right, we left our last bolt in the top of the vacuum pump, and we're getting ready to separate it now. So we're gonna get our air service line off there, just disconnect that, and then we're gonna take our last 8 metric bolt out. And what I'll do, back that bolt out just a little bit, and then I'll grab that vacuum pump and shake it just a little bit. It's usually stuck. So I've got an indexing pry bar that I use for it. And there's a couple spots on the flange of the vacuum pump, where you can kind of get a pry bar behind it. I just sink it loose like that. Leave my bolt in there. This gasket, I'll probably say it 3 or 4 times in the video, you have to replace this gasket. All the other gaskets that we run into and O-rings here are reusable. If you want to replace them, you can. But this gasket on the vacuum pump, this is non-negotiable. You've got to replace it. It is also the most common, well, it is also a very common leak point on the 6.7 Powerstrokes as well. So you want to change it anyway to save yourself an oil leak. So we've got our vacuum pump dislodged. We're just going to shake it and bring her straight out. Now it's got dogs, what I call a dog, that it indexes to on the pump drive gear. We're going to show you a little bit more about that in a minute. This is the gasket I'm talking about. Came off, looks good. So we're going to replace that, and now we will start showing you the high pressure lines being removed. We're going to remove the high pressure fuel delivery line isolators. So there's 5 of these 8 metric bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 5th one down here. So these isolators are what keep the lines from vibrating and then being able to touch and rub a hole in each other. So we'll take those bolts out, and then we'll take those saddles and isolator tops off, and then that'll give us access to be able to remove the high pressure lines. And then we're going to remove the isolators for the balance line. So right now CP4 delivers both lines to the driver's side rail. Then you have a delivery line that brings it over the passenger side rail, goes underneath of the EGR here. We're not going to remove that line, but we are going to make that line to where we can articulate it and move it around so we don't have any problems on the CP4 pump removal. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through and we're going to take these 5 bolts out of these isolators. Then we'll come back and show you what we got. So we've got our 5 isolator bolts out of the high pressure lines. Now we're going to the clamps holding the crossover line in. They're both 8 metrics. And I'm afraid I'm going to hit Adam with the camera there. So I'm going to go over to the other one and I'll show you where that one is. And then you have this one on the coolant crossover. So we'll remove both of those. Then we will remove this isolator holder that's on the back of this pump bracket on the CP4. We'll get it. I took the isolators themselves out of the brackets, as you can see right here, and just put them over there. I'll move this one once we get the lines loosened up, and that just keeps you from dropping them in the engine and can't find them. So I'm going to go through and get everything I just showed you loosened up. And remember, we're not removing the crossover line. We're just unbolting it so we have full movement of the line. All right, we're going to go ahead and start taking our high side lines off now. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is this return line is clipped to your delivery lines in a couple places. So just go ahead and pop those clips off just like so. And then 19 metric for the 2 lines at the pump themselves. And we'll go ahead and I've already loosened those up. So you loosen those up and then go ahead and go ahead and get them away from the CP4 pump like so. And then you're going to get your lines at the driver's side rail. So the 3 lines you're working with. So here's the 2 delivery lines from the CP4, and then this is the crossover line closest to the front here. I've already got them loosened up, but I use a 17 metric crow's foot. If you don't have this, they're not crazy tight. A stubby 17 metric will get you in there and get you what you need. So I'm just going to remove that line right there and show you coming out. Again, a little bit of residual fuel. Just kind of be careful on it. Turn it back this way so you can fish it out. Like so. And there you are. So there's the first of our 2 high side lines. We will not be using them back. All right, I'm going to show you how to take the passenger side line out, the passenger side of the CP4 and show you how to get it out. So obviously disconnect it from everything. This one was a little bit tricky. That's why we had to cut away from that. So what I do is disconnect the I disconnect the connector at this forward injector. So use a pick, pull the red lock up, and then disconnect the injector. Okay. Then what I do is I take the return line, and it has got a Christmas tree clip back here on this standard. I get it out, get it freed up. Okay, just like so. Then this main wiring harness, it is on a stud. So I just get all of these wiring harnesses loose. If you want to try to attack this wiring harness right here in the valve cover, you can. I find it'll come out of there with a little bit of tweaking and not have to do that. So what we do now is we just start fishing this line up, and it's got to come underneath of this line going to that first injector. Okay, and then at that time, you're just going to take it, and then you're just going to pull it forward like so. And as you're pulling it forward, you're going to rotate it. And when you rotate it, that's going to get you pushing forward, and you can get out from underneath of the main wire harness. Be really careful doing that. And then you can get out from underneath of the return line as well. And then once you get clear of those lines right there, you're out. All right. So, turn it around so you can get out from underneath of the line in the valley, the coolant supply line in the valley, and just keep corkscrewing it out, and there you go. All right, we're at the back of the CP4 pump here. Sorry about the zoom in, zoom out. There are two 8 metric bolts that hold the high pressure line bracket on. I'll get my hands out of the way here in just a second. I have this unbolted. We'll go ahead and remove that bracket now after we do that. And then there's 3 13 metric pump mounting nuts here, here, and here. Go ahead and loosen those up and get those off. I wanted to show you what these 13 metric nuts look like that are on the back of the pumps. There's 3 studs through the block there. Then you've got these long threaded nut sleeves here that they are on. So once you get the 3 of those out, then you unhook your FCA, and you want to make sure you tuck that connector back in there, try to protect it, because it will be going back on your CP4. And now we are ready to loosen up our, well, that feels good. All right, we're ready to loosen up our drive gear nut, and yeah, we'll be in good shape. We're gonna go ahead and pull this pump drive nut and the washer off of it as well too. This is what we're going to talk about here while we're kind of doing this. It's 27 metric, excuse me, I'm sorry. We're just going to go ahead and get our socket on it here real quick and just give it a good wrap with our hand, and that'll break it loose. It's only got about 60 foot-pounds on it, so it not a whole lot of torque. Excuse me again. Apologize to the people at home. I do this just like I do a VP44. I kind of keep my finger on that so it nut won't fall down in. I don't know that it could, but you know what? Better safe than sorry. I apologize, it doesn't have a washer on it. So got our pump drive out. Now, the 11 to 19 trucks, the CP4, and you'll see as it comes out of here, it's not technically timed. However, it does have a keyway on it. The 20 and to 22 trucks, there are some timing recommendations that they give to you in the installation of a CP4 pump. That has to do with harmonics of the motor. They get a tick to them if they're found to be out of that phase. What we're going to do is we're going to show you this tapered shaft pump that you get from S&S right now is actually going to change. A new camshaft is going to be coming out on the pump, should be here pretty soon, and it will be keyed, so it's not going to matter at that time. However, the timing of the engine is still going to be relative to the 2 dots on the pump gear lining up with the single dot on the cam gear. We're down on the pump drive gear, and we're just going to show you what's going on down here. Now you can see our 27 metric nut, and I'm going to talk about this, but I want to get this shot real quick and just show you kind of what's going on. These dogs in the fuel pump gear, this is what the vacuum pump rides in to actuate the vacuum pump. And I've got the cam gear and the pump drive gear lined up, and you can just see in this shot, you can just see there's a single mark on the cam gear, there's a double mark on the fuel pump gear. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to turn the motor over with the 27 metric nut on the front of the CP4, and we are going to get them to where they are meshed perfectly. That will put these dogs of the fuel pump gear at the 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock position, running north-south, and then we are going to pull that nut right there in that position. Then we'll show you that from the top. We just wanted a really, really good shot of those two marks on the fuel pump gear, single mark on the cam gear. Just makes that an easier process to pull it in that orientation as well. So we've got that lined up, and what we're going to do is we're going to show you on the pump what you're up against there. I thought I might get lucky and take it out, but it's on a tapered shaft, so we're going to get a little ball peen, just put it on the snout of the pump and give her a little wrap, and she should pop right out. All right, the pump's on a tapered shaft, so I just like to use a ball peen right on the center of the CP4 drive shaft. It's got an indention in it, and ball peen falls into it almost perfectly. And then you've got enough room to give it a couple right with a hammer, and there she is, she's loose. All right, now the line, our crossover line, we unbolted it like we told you, just so we've got some manipulation of the pump here. We're going to ease everything back. The pump gear can't come out, so we kind of want to keep everything kosher there. Keep going back on our pump, on our crossover line, and there is our CP4 out and in our hands. I wanted to get a good shot of the single mark on the cam gear, which is going to be at the bottom there, and then the double mark on the pump gear at the top there, lined up and meshed. And these are helical gears, so when you go to reinstall this gear, you've got to be cognizant of the fact that you can miss a tooth when you line it up to reinstall it. So I'm gonna try to pull back here just a second, and I'm gonna go ahead and remove this gear. The reason why we're removing this gear is because there are two bolts in this cover, and you can see I've already removed one of them, but I've still got this 15 over here that I've got to get out. These bolts are removed because we make provisions for mounting the DCR pump in the cover with a new plate that will actually utilize these bolt holes here. I pulled one out. We had to reshoot this shot, but I did already remove one. So there should be two inside your cover. They're 15 metric, and we're going to go show you some of the tips and tricks on getting those removed from the cover. All right, I wanted to talk about the two 15 metric headed pump bolts that we pull out to mount our DCR mounting plate up. So these bolts are shanked to where they have a larger thread here that threads into the engine block, smaller thread that this pump nut, which we will retain this on the DCR installation, goes on. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, for just talking about a bolt, it's pretty cool. Going to pull these out of the cover because of this washer makes it just a little bit difficult. The washer stays with the bolt unless you put a lot of force on it and run it down, but it's going to stay right there. But you know, you want to be careful what you're doing. A wobble socket is really helpful here if you have one. I have a old wore out extension that the detent ball is about half stuck on, so I don't really have to worry about my socket coming off, and it's got enough flex in it to be good. I'm stuffing a rag down in there to make sure that I don't have anything that drops down the gear train. So this is a 15 metric, and I've got a wore out, and the detent ball is stuck on this, so my socket's not going to come off. I have to knock it off with a hammer anyway, so I dug through my box and found that. And we're going to get this bolt out real quick. Kind of going to show you a little bit of what we run into. I've already broken the other one loose. Now the bottom stud, you don't remove that. You leave that alone. We're actually going to reuse that on the DCR pump installation, so you don't have to worry about it. No, I'll go in here and get this bolt out. I don't know how much of this you're going to be able to see. I've already got it loosened up. So I'm going to just go ahead and back it out, and then Adam can come in the engine valley and you can kind of see what he's doing there. So you can see that stud, we're starting to turn it out. And once you get past the shank of the bolt that has the thread size inside the block, you'll kind of get to a little stopping point where a shallow well socket will stop in there. You can go ahead and pull it off of the bolt anyway. And you come to this point, that right there, it hits the cover. What I do is just real easy. I keep threading it and putting pressure to it towards the passenger side truck or whatever side opposite of what you're on. And then that just lets it kind of thread right out of the cover. Keeping my hand on it. I've got a little rag in there to catch everything. And there's your bolt out. So just use a good quality socket because you don't want to get in there. There's not a lot of torque on this, but you don't want to round it off. That's going to make for a bad day. All the things. Just take your time and you'll get it out. And then you leave this stud in the bottom, stays in there. All right, so I wanted to show you the mounting plate for the DCR, for the S&S DCR pump, and how this is going to work. And it's really ingenious the way they set this up. So again, the whole project was get a pump in the valley, just like you have the CP4. They consistently were able to do with this, but with this pump's configuration, the DCR pump, a little bit of spacing was needed to be added. So S&S came up with a really nice mounting bracket, and that's what I'm going to show you here and how this is going to work. So what the mounting bracket is going to do is it is going to utilize the two mounting studs that we took out of the block, the factory mounting studs. And then S&S supplies you with two T45 beveled bolts. Those will be installed into the block and it will hold this bracket to the block. Now, once that is done, there are studs that come with it. This is going to be your mounting studs. They are the same size and thread pitch to utilize the stock pump nuts, which were really nice. We were talking about. There's a short threaded side of the shank and a long threaded side of the shank. The short side of the shank is what goes into the mounting bracket, and we're going to show you that right there that the pump mounts on. So you'll be utilizing the bottom stud, and then you'll add two to the top of the plate. I don't put these on until I get the plate inside the truck. S&S supplies you with Loctite. All four of those fasteners are going to get Loctite as well, so make sure you use it. We will call out the torque specs when we get there. And now I'm going to set the table up because I want to talk about timing on this pump just a little bit, and I want to make sure that I make mention again. The 11 to 19 trucks don't have to be timed. In this common rail system, timing is not necessary. However, the stock CP4 pump that comes off the truck, it has a locating pin in it, so it is essentially timed, I guess by proxy, you would say. Where this is a tapered shaft pump at the time of this filming, S&S is now in development for a cam that is going to have a timing pin on it, so this will be something that you don't have to worry about later down the road. However, you will have to turn the engine over to where the cam mark and the DCR and the fuel pump mark are lined up before you remove the gear, because at that point, you know, you're going to have timing by the pin. However, we got the tractor going by here. Hey, that's what you get at Thoroughbred Diesel. Every once in a while, a tractor goes by when you're in the middle of an install video. John Deere, of course. So let's talk about timing. So we are going to time this pump just because we want to get you accustomed to how this is for you 20 plus guys. If you look back on this before we get to our 20 and up video, you can have this to reference. So 24 degrees before top dead center is what we're going to be using. As the pump is positioned in the truck, that will be with the dot as you're facing the pump at about the 6:30, 7 o'clock position. The reason why there is timing there, so again, this common rail systems, and I guess I could say most common rail systems don't rely on timing. However, in the 20 and up trucks, the way the fuel regulators work, you'll get a little bit of chatter if the pump is out of phase, I'm going to call it. So again, with this truck being a 2012, I'm still going to time it to show you how it's done. If you don't do this, it's perfectly fine. Nothing is going to change. Your harmonics are going to change because the
the regulators in this truck do not work the same way that they do on the twin ups. So let me show you redneck timing, what me and the guys at S&S have called this. If you sit your DCR pump on the bench and you turn your FCA, which is this electronic control module on the top of the pump, if you turn it to where you're on the long flat surface with the FCA up, all you will do is take this shaft and turn it to the 6 o'clock position directly down. So now when you go to mount it in the truck, you'll be like this position. So you'll have the back plate of the pump will be flat, discharge lines will be flat, running east-west as the pump is, or as the engine is oriented north-south. Yeah. And then you will look, and then this little indentation mark on the pump, which I'm going to show you right there. There's an indentation mark right at the bottom of it. That indentation mark is now sitting at about the 6:30 to 7 o'clock position, as it will be in the truck. So pretty slick little way of timing it. Again, flat surface, FCA up. Your dot needs to be at the 6 o'clock position, down on the bench. So now when you mount it in the truck, it is going to be at about that 6:30, 7 o'clock position. So I just want to make sure I say this one more time. This is not necessary on 11 to 19 truck, but if you just want to nerd out and do it that way, it's perfectly fine to do it. It gives you good experience on how to do it correctly in a 20 and plus truck. And then there will be a running change, manufacturing running change in this pump in some months after this installation video, where the pump drive gear will be identical to that of what the CP4 is, and the CP4 camshaft has a pin in it, as you can see there, that engages this pin in the gear so it's timed correctly. We are ready to install our DCR pump plate, and a couple things to talk on here. One, again, you're reusing the stock stud as it is here in the bottom of the cavity, and then the two mounting holes for the beveled screws are metric 10 by 1.5. Metric 10 by 1.5. When you go to take the bolts out of it, you can hurt the threads in there. I definitely suggest getting a metric 10 by 1.5 thread chaser and cleaning those holes out really good. Then you want to make sure that you get this surface prepped well, and because you want a completely flat contact of the DCR mounting plate to the block. So we're going to install it. We just hang it on that bottom stock stud, and then we will put a little bit of Loctite on our beveled bolts. Now these are T45 Torxes. You want them to be smooth when they go in, and then we will put a little more Loctite on this one, and we will go ahead and install it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and tighten these down, and you want to torque them to 25 foot-pounds. Again, these are T45s on the mounting bolts for the plate to the block. You want to make sure the block is good and clean. If you need to chase these threads, they are metric 10 by 1.5. So we're going to take just a few minutes here. We're going to torque this plate down, and then we'll come back and show you putting the studs on. Back in the engine valve now, I just want to show you the studs. Remember, the studs have got a short side, I'm going to show you, and then a long side. The long side is for mounting of the DCR pump. Short side is what we're going to put into the mounting plate. We're going to give her just a little bit more Loctite. And then the cool thing about this mounting plate is they've got the shoulders of it out to where it clears the block, and you just run the short side of the threads in snug, and then you will be ready to install your DCR pump. Loctite. Uh-oh. Knocked her off a kilter there. Sorry about the motion of the ocean there, folks. Snug that down, run it all the way to the shoulder, and there you are. All right, so I want to talk about installing our DCR pump. The 11 to 14 pickups, I think, are going to probably be the hardest ones to get the installation on, and it's because of a combination of the oil line on the turbo and the heat shield on the passenger side manifold. what we found, I really thought this was not going to be able to be done with the oil line on the turbo. What we found was we wound up having to just bend this this heat shield on the passenger side manifold just a little bit, and then that, because it's flared out at the front, and we got that taken care of. So we'll go ahead and install the pump now. So when you go to install the pump, you want the drive gear to go down, and go ahead and engage this, and then again you'll be manipulating your crossover line here. It's really nice to have an extra set of hands. At some point Adam is going to have to sit the big camera down, and he'll have to help me with the line manipulation on getting it in. So an extra set of hands is nice, or you can zip tie it if you want to, and go that way. So when we go in, you'll notice we're going to go nose down on the pump, and we're going to can it one direction or the other. Really helpful to leave the line caps on here as well. Line caps keep you from damaging the threads in any way. And then watch the low pressure regulator side of this. If you get it down too far below the heat shield, it can really give you some problems. So we're going to go ahead and again nose down, drive gear down, or drive shaft down. No, not yet. Okay, for just a second. And then we want to, as we're going down with it, we're just going to take it over the back of the pump, the lines. We're going to go the other way so that we can get that over those lines. Perfect. All right, now we're going to lift this up. All right, just like so. And then you engage it and push it forward. So try not to tweak on your balance line or your crossover line too much. You want to make sure that you lubricate the O-ring, and then we can just push it forward with our hands, and it'll engage the front cover. Don't pull it up with the nuts. And yeah, you just want to go ahead and use the OE nuts that are used on the CP4 pump. We will install them, and we're going to thread them up hand tight. Again, do not bring the pump to the engine cover with force or with the nuts. The nose of the DCR pump should engage that drive flange just fine without having to do that. A little bit of back pressure on it, and it'll pop right up. So I'm going to put these OE nuts on. Don't forget the bottom one, which is right underneath here. You can access it just fine. And we'll just hand tighten those up, and we'll come back and talk to you about the torque. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put our front drive gear on. I misspoke there. I told you we'd be talking about the pump nut torque. So we've got the pump nuts. We've just got them hand tight, and then they're ready to go. The pump's flush up, but we're gonna go ahead and install our drive gear. Remember, 2 dots on our drive gear. We're gonna line up with a single dot on our cam gear. We are gonna be checking that. And remember, it's a helical gear, so you'll have to start on one side of it or the other, which is, that's about a tooth off right there. That felt pretty good, but I'll go back and check it. We're tightening our pump nut now to 60 foot-pounds. We've got a ratchet down there on the harmonic balancer holding it. The engine compression wouldn't hold it to get it to 60. All right. And then, so we had to bar that over on the harmonic balancer. You can do that with a 12.18 metric socket, and that'll give you something to bar against. So pretty easy. And then now you want to go ahead and torque down your pump nuts. Your pump nuts will go to 18 foot-pounds. Instructions tell you specifically do not over torque them. So, all right, we're going to install the driver's side high pressure fuel line to the rail now. The driver's side fuel pressure line goes obviously on, sorry about that light there,
the driver's side line obviously goes to the driver's side of the pump and then goes to the third port back on the rail. So this is your first port for your crossover line, second port is passenger, third port back is driver. So you want to try to snake it under everything, drake it under the vacuum line, the return line, the main wiring harness. Give yourself enough slack to be able to turn the line over, and then you're going to actually snake it underneath of the coolant line for the turbo, like so. And then it goes to the third port back. It actually goes underneath of that underneath of that number 1 injector fuel line right there. So you're going to just go ahead and just kind of hand snug it on the rail, and then make sure you got all your wiring harnesses out. Then go ahead and take your protective cap off the DCR pump and then attach it to the pump. Fit was perfect. I didn't have to tweak a thing there. All right, all my clearances look good. Looks like it's going to get everywhere it needs to be. Perfect. Okay, so that's our driver's side high line installed. Before you put your tail shaft bracket on, your hold down bracket on here, you want to go ahead and torque that driver's side fuel line to 26 foot-pounds per the instructions. And then you want to install the tail bracket here, and you will reuse the 2 8 metrics that came from the first pump. Fit and finish on this is, or fit on this is just about perfect. So because you're reusing, you know, as much OE as you could here, and that will, leaving the crossover line loose, will give you access to those 2 bolts. So we will move that line back just like so. I got a hand freed up to do it, and then we will install this one like so. And there we are. So that's going to leave us, show you the bracket. So that's going to have your crossover line is going to fit in there nicely, and then we're going to get our passenger line will go in there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down, and then we will work on our next line. We're going to go ahead and put our crossover line and hand tighten it down onto the first port here. And now what we're told to do is take the saddle clamp that goes on the tail shaft piece here, and we'll go ahead and we'll get our first portion of the saddle clamp on the crossover line as such, and just leave that there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the longer of the 2 lines, which is the passenger side line, and we are going to go ahead and work it over towards the rail as well. So it is going to go, yes sir, something like so. All right, we've got the passenger line set in here, and I was going to talk about routing because I got it routed through here and didn't have any problems with it, and I really just don't want to pull it back out. So you route this through, start your pump in, and I squeeze it between the coolant line, take it over to the port on the DCR pump, and just hand tighten it real quick to the DCR pump. Okay, and then I fed it over our wiring harness here, through our fuel return line, and then to the second port on the driver's side fuel rail right here. And fit and finish on this was great. No problems there. I'm over here and I know I'm going to forget it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave that out. Make sure we've got that out. And I will check my tightness on this. So now, before we tighten anything up, we're going to go through and get our all of our saddle clamps on. So we've got all of the isolators and stuff queued up and ready to go. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get our saddle clamps on, get everything lined up here, and then our saddle clamps, will torque them to 89 inch-pounds, and then we'll come back, tighten up our fuel lines. Everything on the fuel lines is going to be 26 foot-pounds, both at the rail side and at the pump side. We've already done our driver's side, just got to do the passenger. We're going to reinstall our vacuum pump now. Make sure that when you reinstall your vacuum pump, you replace the gasket. Again, the most common leak point on these trucks, one of the most common leak points on these trucks. All right, so what we'll do is we will go ahead and install this. And remember that the pump drive, the vacuum pump drive, installs into the recesses for its pump into the pump gear. So be really aware of that. And when you go to install it, it has to go flush with the block. If it doesn't, don't try to pull it up with the bolts, because more than likely you are not engaged into the recesses in the pump drive gear. So there are 4 bolts here. I'm just going to put one in it real quick to hold it, and then I will go around and put the other 4 in. Of course, we put just a little bit of Loctite on these and then tighten them down to 89 inch-pounds. We're going to go ahead and drop our accessory drive in, or our fan belt drive here. You just want to make sure that you're watching your belt alignment and you don't get anything out of kilter there. There is, on the driver's side there's a pretty good dowel to start that on to help you with. And then I'll just put a bolt in to kind of hang it. And then I want to make sure that you want to leave 1 bolt of that out to hold your, there's, what is there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to leave 1 bolt out to, that your fan drive sensor is going for the clutch sensor. So I'm sorry. I'm just going through my serpentine belt and make sure that my routing is good. Looks good from this side. And yeah, everything looks good there. So we're in good shape with belt routing, everything looking good. Okay, and then that'll leave us to where when we go to put tension on it, it'll go right underneath of that pulley right there. So we'll go through, we will reinstall all of our bolts here, except for one, and tighten them down to 18 foot-pounds. All right, I have got my serpentine belt pretty well in position where I want it. I'm gonna put another good push on it. And that should have it. I do my drive belt before I do my clutch fan, because it leaves tension on the accessory drive to be able to tighten our clutch fan. So there we are. We've got our drive belt on. You want to check all of your pulleys. If it's a rib pulley, of course it gets bottom side of the belt. Smooth pulley gets top side of the belt, all the things. So we will spin on our fan assembly. Remember, you've left 1 bolt out of there. If you put cardboard in it, make sure you get the cardboard out. I'm going to spin this. Let's see. Finally got it. You just gotta stay with it. All right. And then we will bring our sensor up, and it goes right back to here once you have it where you want it. So we'll spin it a little more to where it's close enough for the bracket to grab. There we go. Then that'll give us just enough to get that last accessory drive bolt in. We'll put it in, and then we will, don't forget to attach your wire at the fan clutch, which will be right here. So we'll take our bracket and we'll bring it back around on accessory drive, line a hole up where we can get our last bolt in, install our last bolt, and then torque it to 18 foot-pounds. And then we will hook up our fan clutch.
All right, once you've got your electrical connector on your clutch drive hooked up and your bolt in and tightened down to 18 foot-pounds, go ahead and tighten up your fan clutch. So low side fuel pressure assemblies, this is our unit from S&S, and then this is our stock unit. Now there's differences in the sensor rollovers and what we're going to use versus through the years. So 11-14s, you've got two sensors. Both sensors go in the line. The 15 to 19s, you're going to use the sensor, one sensor, and adapt with this adapter, and then a plug in the open port. And then on the 2020 and ups, you're using the sensor that's in the line plus a plug, and that gives you everything you need. You also need to roll this metal bracket over that's got the little isolators in it. I'm going to show you how to do that. S&S sends you one in the kit, which is really, really nice. They're not hard to get off, so actually, you know what? I'm going to do that now. So to get these off, I use a little flat-bladed pick, and then I trip the inside of it just like so. And then I go to the one behind it, and I trip that one. And you have to look at what orientation, or excuse me, I was on the wrong side of that. You have to look at what the orientation was, like that, of which is the hinge side. So you can pop that right off. So I got to reuse that one, so we've got a spare to keep in the truck or add to our hoard pile, as Adam would say about me. And then now we'll roll our sensors over. So our forward sensor is a 19 metric on this truck. And we will take it out, roll it into the new line set. This is our temp sensor. And then our rear sensor. 1 1/16 works best for me. I've already broken it loose. I am going to clean that off just a little bit. TV timeout, talk amongst yourselves, everybody. And I'll wipe that down. And we will uncover the S&S line, and then that kit, that sensor goes in the rear position. So now we will take our bolt out. The bolt has got one of these sleeves in it, like we see on the intake manifold. That is not needed on the S&S kit. So we are done with our return line. Let me look at one thing here. I might be telling you wrong because we might be rolling that over. Nope, they make provision for that, so you don't have to worry about the connection. Good to go. That takes care of that. So for 11 to 14s, here is a view of what the low pressure delivery kit for the DCR pump looks like, set up and ready to go. And of course, this will go back, this isolator that we showed you, it will go back in stock position right here before the bend of the line.
All right, we're getting ready to install our low pressure lines here. I want to make mention the 2 bolts for the brackets that hold the crossover line down to right here. We had to reinstall those. And before you start installing your lines, you want to make sure that you connect the FCA on the DCR pump, and also make sure that you plug in this forward injector right here. Make sure that that's plugged in. And we have put our return line. We've got these clips in, and there's a Christmas tree there. So we're ready for the low pressure lines. So low pressure lines, you just want to make sure that you lubricate the O-rings that go into the pump. And then we just feed, this is your return line. So this is going to go feed back towards the back. Adam's got the light on kind of where it goes there. And it's going to land just about right there. Then we've only got one of the hold downs is going to be retained here. And that's going to go right there. So everything looks good. The whole other hold down goes here to the fuel cup. So everything looks good. So what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and take our 2 plugs out of our DCR pump, and we're ready to install these lines. Okay, we've lubricated the O-rings. You make sure that you don't pinch the O-rings. Okay, you want to make sure that you don't pinch O-rings. Nothing is off center here, so just kind of hand pressure down. It should go into the pump pretty easily. You work your lines pretty well there, and I know that I'm in the right position because as you work with your brackets and everything is going where it's supposed to go, it'll all loosen up as you go right there. So we're going to install our hold down bolt at the fuel filter cup here. That is the first one I like to do. And then I'm going to install my next one at the valve cover right down here. Completely slap missed it. All right. So this is our fuel delivery right here that'll go back to the filter, and then our return line. So our return line's ready to snap on at the connection. So we'll just go ahead and line it up. Make sure we don't have any wiring harnesses in the way or anything. And we just simply slide that onto the brass nipple off the rail, push till it clicks like so. And then we want to put a little bit of Loctite on the bolt for the DCR pump, holding the low side lines down. So we will do that, and you are reusing the stock bolt that came out of the pump. And yeah, good shape right there. So we're going to take just a second, and we're going to torque everything down. The low side lines at the DCR pump, this torque is critical. 89 inch-pounds here, 89 inch-pounds at the valve cover, as at the stud on the valve cover as well. And at this point, we can move this line in, and then we're going to come back and we're going to tighten both of these sensors up as well. We can close the door on our lines. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to tighten everything down. I'm going to torque everything down, and we will come back and reconnect the return line. All right, I got had to remember where I had tucked that other return line away. So this is our return coming back from our S&S bypass kit. It will click on to the new S&S line like so, and then our return fuel that actually gets filtered, that connection goes there and locks back down. So that puts that whole circuit back together. Everything is clearing nicely. Make sure you hook your electrical connectors back up for your sensors. And that one will only go the one way. And of course it's going to fight me. I'm trying to do a video. And then lock it down. Then you've got a little Christmas tree push pin right here. And then this is the last one. This goes over to when the pipe comes back in for the PCV. So that all looks good right there. CP4 is hooked up. Everything looks good. Or I'm sorry, DCR is hooked up. We have all connections at the front done. Yeah, okay. All right, we are ready now for our lower intake manifold. Adam says we didn't show that on video, taking this intake boot off, but it is actually, is directional. It shows you how it needs to go back, which way it needs to point. So we're going to throw our lower intake manifold on now. You will just line it up with the boots. I'll take the bolts out just to make it a little bit easier on myself. Line my inlets up. What happens there on that top one is that just shoves it back. So you line it back up and it will fit just swimmingly. All right. These are all 10 metrics here. The 10 metrics will be tightened to 18 foot-pounds. And then once we have this portion of it done, then we will put our EGR crossover in. A couple of things we want to do here as we progress along. We've got our intake, our lower intake on, torque down. We've got to make sure that we've got all of our boots tightened up, 2 clamps on top, 2 clamps on the bottom. We will reconnect our PCV, and then we will run our electrical connector over to that, and then we are in good shape right there. So we can also go ahead and put our this is the vacuum line for the wastegate, and we can go ahead and reconnect it right here, and then that will have a be connected onto push button spot onto the upper intake manifold. So we don't want to forget to take our towels out right there. Yeah, let's do, before we do our upper intake manifold, I'm going to put this oil fill on and tighten it down. And now we're going to just reinstall our oil fill. Remember, it has to go down. And there is a relief to get that back into, like so, and then turn it until it locks. Put your bolt in, just like that. And then don't forget to put your oil fill cap on. We're gonna go ahead and put our EGR crossover in now. I just go ahead and get it positioned and then do my electrical connector. Make sure it clicks. If you think that your electrical connector is going to, this has got a Christmas tree on it, but if you think it's going to be in the way of anything, please by all means use a zip tie or two. But what we'll do now is we'll just get our gaskets lined back up, and then we'll put our EGR crossover on. I'll put one bolt in here. Remember, the shiny bolts go towards the intake side, and then the rustier bolts go to the EGR side. So I start one bolt on a gasket, and then you can swing the gasket into position anywhere you want to. So I'll reach over here, grab a gasket, and usually just go ahead and feed it in like so, and then just kind of use my wear marks. But anyway, so the rusty bolts again go on the bottom or on the EGR side, and the shiny bolts will go on the intake side. We're ready to put our upper intake plenum on. First thing you want to do is I disconnected this the wastegate line, so you just want to make sure that you get it in there, and it actually will route to the inside of that plenum. So I've got my everything out and away. I had rags in there for that, so we have removed the rags, of course, and then our intake plenum, we check the gaskets on the bottom or the O-rings on the bottom. They're all good. They are totally reusable. You want to leave your inner two bolts in because it just makes installation so much easier. And then you just put it in driver's side first, and then just like that, she'll sit down. So you will have your bolt to go back at the transmission thing, and we are good to go. So we have got some bolts put in here and get them tightened down, and we will do that. Do not forget to snake out your map sensor. You have a map sensor line that you unhooked. You want to make sure that you get it out and hook it back up, but we'll do that after we get all of our bolts in. So that's what I want to do now. I'm just going to work towards getting bolts in and then get everything torqued down to 89 inch-pounds. All right, I just want to talk about some of the ancillary stuff up on the upper intake manifold. Don't forget to hook up your map sensor, which is right there. And then there is a Christmas tree push pin that goes in there. There's a Christmas tree on the back that has the actuator for the turbo and the offshoot map sensor tied into it as well. We got one bolt that goes in the side of the intake that holds our transmission dipstick. We will install that. And then you've got another one of those 8 metric bolts that's got a big wide washer on it, and that is going to connect the engine oil dipstick to the transmission dipstick and hold all of it together. So there is that. All right, so we're gonna tighten all of those down, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna put our fuel filter in. All right, I said we're gonna put our fuel filter in. We're not. We're gonna do our hot side intercooler pipe. We just want to go put it onto our outlet of the turbo. Make sure that your clamp is down and ready in the, well, and I'm just gonna call it the ready position. When you remove it, it usually stays up. That's the disengaged position. So you just push it onto the turbo until it clicks, which is really nice. The installation of that clamp of that is nice, but taking it off can be a bear. And then I'll fumble around with that one and get my finger cut off. All right, so 11 metric there, and we'll tighten it down, and then we will put our fuel filter on. Okay, we're going to reinstall our fuel filter now. And just remember, anytime you replace a fuel system component, injector, injection pump, whatever it is, change your fuel filter. So a new fuel filter here. I've already done the one down on the frame rail just in preparation for this. So we'll put our fuel filter in the canister and hook our return line up to the rearmost outlet. And then our new fuel supply from going to the DCR is right here, and it's got this nice stay clean fitting on it. Push that on and click it, and then recheck your lines, and new fuel filter installed onto the cold side intercooler boot. But before you do that, you want to make sure that you come back and hook up your throttle valve. All right, so our cold side pipe now, we're gonna go ahead and install. I've got my clip back on it. So you just push it till it clips and then turn it to where it is in there just right. And then slide your clamp up, tighten your clamp down, like so. Yeah, okay. Tighten your clamp up. And yeah, we're going to tighten our clamp up. Then all we're left with is our intake, which I'm not going to show us installing that because I didn't show you uninstalling it because it's an aftermarket intake. We're going to do that and put our batteries back on. So what we'll do is I'll get I'll go ahead and get this tightened down, and then I'm going to come back and show you once I get the air intake on, just routing the coolant line over, the vacuum line over, and then we'll show you the proper starting procedure. Got our air intake on, and now we're just going to put our line on the degas bottle, and then we will route our vacuum hose over here to this stub, and we will just go through and make the various connections of these hoses. And here's spot, Christmas tree right there. Yep, and don't forget our degas cap. Adam's gonna get it for me so I don't fall in the truck. And yeah, we're gonna hook batteries up, and then we will show you starting procedure. All right, long day, guys. We rushed to get this truck done because we want to drive this up to S&S tomorrow, which is another video that we're going to show you. Saw a Christmas tree push pin that I missed there. So all in all, this job honestly probably can be done in your driveway if you're not trying to film 5 or 6 hours. With filming and everything and taking breaks and doing some studying and some talking, wound up, you know, taking us right at what, 12 hours, something like that, really. So yeah, so we're going to go through starting procedure on this, and while you're going through your starting procedure, that's when you really need to be going through your mind. Did I get everything? Big thing is belt drive. Make sure you get your serpentine belt on correctly. Did I miss anything? Did I tighten everything down? All the sensors, because this should start and run flawlessly. No check engine lights, no anything. But where we've done a fuel system component common rail, it's going to take it a little while to before it's going to be able to build rail pressure. And we changed fuel filters on the truck as well, which we suggest with every new injection pump component, so it's going to take us a little while. What we like to do on these trucks, on the Powerstrokes, is turn the key on, and we like to do that anywhere between 3 and 5 times. Just turn the key on, let the lift pump run, and then with this, you're going to be watching for fuel leaks as you do it. Like I said, I'll do it 3 to 5 times, and then we'll turn the truck over. So here we go. I'm gonna let it go one more time here. Again, I'm just checking for any type of leaks. We're good. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, amazing. I mean, it's quiet. I feel like it's got a little bit of a different sound to it than it normally does, honestly. No codes. It's running about 6,000 PSI rail pressure right there. Doesn't look like we've got any high side leaks. Good. Fires up, it runs. That's what she's supposed to do. No codes on the inside. We're good to go. So, this is awesome. We're going to S&S tomorrow, guys, so look for that video. And DCR pump, keep yourself out of CP4 failures. Get one of these. These will be releasing June 15th, 2023. If you're watching this video, make sure that you paid attention to some of the changes that we talked about in the video. We're going to be going to a pin pump after a few months, and yes. So I'm Wade, Thoroughbred Diesel. Big shout out to the guys at S&S for sending us this kit for install and trusting us with their installation. Thanks for watching.